The YouTube I grew up watching was a different place.
In terms of both technical capability and in terms of the type of content that tended to get widely disseminated. Today's YouTube has evolved to the point that it's now home to everything from news programming, to instructional videos, to original movies.
But in the early days, it was much more experimental, primitive, and, to put it nicely, frivolous.
I think back to what videos were widely shared around in the period roughly between 2005 and 2010.
And I remember shoes, I remember cool guy has chill day,
and I remember YouTube cartoons. All of these viral videos, but especially the animations, were low budget and simplistic.
Often the animations were produced by at most 2 or maybe 3 people, but nonetheless they blew up in popularity. Jason Steele, creator of Charlie the Unicorn, partnered with Hot Topic in 2009 to create an official line of merchandise.
The Annoying Orange was picked up for a full series on Cartoon Network, also in 2009.
The series Homestar Runner, which ran from 2000 to 2017, even reached a high enough level of popularity that Limousine, a fake band that appears in the show, were brought on to open for Of Montreal at an Atlanta show in 2008.
Independent online animation was, at one point, a highly profitable and culturally significant market, which begs the question, why are there so few creators producing viral animated content today? Where did all of the rockstar animators from the late noughts go? What is the landscape like now for animators looking to use YouTube as a platform to gain exposure? The decline of popular internet animation is a complex issue that arose due to a number of factors. First of all, it's partially due to changes in technology and its effects on the way people engage with online content. In the 2000s, YouTube's video quality was extremely limited,
and most animators posted their content on sites that catered specifically to animation, such as Albino Black Sheep and Newgrounds, sites which allowed for much larger file sizes than YouTube did at the time.
Many content creators in the mid-noughts also had their own websites where they hosted their videos, in addition to having them up on other platforms. This allowed them to sell merchandise, engage with fans through blog posts, and generate additional ad revenue. But in the past decade, YouTube has caught up to the video sharing capabilities of these other sites. And with the rise of smartphones and tablets, consumption of digital content has shifted from websites to apps.
As of 2018, it was reported that 71% of all internet traffic in the United States was through smartphones or tablets, and apps have been outperforming desktop websites in terms of traffic since at least 2014.
With this in mind, one can see how running a tailor-made website has become less and less of a viable option due to the difficulties of both optimizing a website for mobile browsers and developing new apps. It's much more cost-efficient for independent creators to use already existing platforms to host their content. And in the case of animators and filmmakers, the only real option that works for them is YouTube. This consolidation of content is more convenient and efficient for consumers, but ultimately it leaves content creators completely at the mercy of the platform, which leads me into the second and possibly most widely cited factor: changes to the search algorithm. YouTube's algorithm is the system which decides which videos will be recommended to viewers, and this system prioritizes videos that foster higher engagement and therefore more potential ad revenue. Initially, this algorithm rewarded videos based on number of clicks, but this system proved flawed as users could easily exploit the system by giving their videos misleading titles and thumbnails. In response to this problem, the algorithm was altered so that instead of clicks, it prioritized total minutes watched. In theory, this makes sense. More people watch the entirety of a video. Logic follows that it must be a video that people enjoy more than something they click on and then immediately close after a minute. However, the algorithm does not take into account how long the video is when collating total minutes of watch time. Additionally, YouTube's algorithm tends to recommend videos from channels that upload regularly and frequently. Both of these pose issues when it comes to animation, which is far more laborious to create than live action unless you have a large team working with you. So, in stark contrast to the wide variety of highly experimental, low-budget indie cartoons that were getting mass views around 2008 and 2009, most of the highest viewed animated content on YouTube today tends to fall into one of two categories.
Storyboard animations that feature extremely limited motion but can be produced in a very short amount of time, or mass-produced, low-quality children's videos that make money by taking advantage of popular search terms and parents who use their iPads as babysitters.
And this, in turn, leads to a third point that is less often considered in arguments about YouTube's bias against animators. The bar for success is so much higher now than what it used to be, despite the fact that the initial investment of starting an animation channel is still fairly high. When I spoke to Kevin Ryan, an animator who has been uploading to YouTube for the better part of a decade, he pointed out the fact that the decline of YouTube animation seemed to coincide with an uptick in professionally made live-action content and a general increase in video quality.
I jumped into the YouTube game a little late. It was definitely in the waning years, especially for animation. That's definitely when people's production values jumped up and they were really starting to like actual crews were coming together and like series were kind of popping up. But at least for animation, it was kind of when it was starting to maybe not as good.
The capabilities of the site have increased such that much higher quality short films and series can be hosted. And the fact that YouTube has such a huge percent of the world's online video traffic makes it an attractive platform for smaller production companies looking for an alternative to traditional media distribution channels. Importantly, to go back to the way changing technology has impacted YouTube users, advances in smartphone technology also mean film and audio recording and editing have become even more accessible for aspiring content creators than it was at the start of the decade. Almost everyone today owns a phone with a camera, but in contrast, an aspiring animator has to not only learn the basic skills, but also has to download and become familiar with animation software. On top of this skill barrier, there's also a fairly high bar when it comes to monetizing one's creative output.
As of 2018, the threshold for channel monetization is 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time within the past 12 months.
And given the difficulties already discussed with how the algorithm works, it's incredibly hard for a small channel that primarily posts animation to get that kind of exposure. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. Here's what Kevin had to say about his experience with the YouTube Partner System.
In 2013, after monetizing, I was in very bad shape financially, and there were a couple months after a viral hit or two that YouTube helped pay my rent. I posted in the right place at the right time with videos and being monetized these days. That million would probably get you about maybe $70. From what I've heard from others and what I've experienced myself is correct. YouTube views don't get you anything. The ad revenue you get from it is basically nothing. It's at this point you need to now have merchandise or need to do live shows.
So, what are some of the ways that aspiring animators can circumvent the problems caused by YouTube? There are a number of things happening in the online animation community at the moment in response. The first thing is alternative methods of funding. Sites like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and Patreon have been vital to a lot of people when it comes to maintaining income regardless of YouTube. It's also been a boon in terms of providing the money needed to support large teams of animators and fund larger projects.
David Firth, probably best known as the creator of Salad Fingers, has managed to remain consistently active on YouTube and release a feature film, thanks in no small part to Patreon. And the soon-to-be-released animated pilot Long Gone Gulch was almost entirely crowdfunded via Kickstarter.
However, this is more of a temporary fix for the problem,
as those sites are not entirely without issues of their own.
Another thing is an active push towards decentralization of online video, something that has been argued for by content creators across the platform, not just animators. YouTube's algorithm changes, as well as other problems like their copyright strike system and often nonsensical decisions regarding what videos are or are not profitable to advertisers, have been complained about and discussed at length by a number of creators. And this has greatly increased awareness about the problems with one platform having such a monopoly over one type of online content. When I asked Kevin about what he thought, he was hopeful.
YouTube's definitely kind of the norm, though. From what I can tell, and with the circles I'm running in, is Newgrounds is coming back. They've overhauled the site, and they're kind of accepting more people. Every time YouTube goes out of its way to like shoot itself in the foot, Newgrounds pops up like, hey, we have a feature that's like that was taken away.
The problems that animators face when it comes to adapting to the changing landscape of YouTube are a mirror to problems faced not just across the platform, but across the internet. Regardless of one's preferred medium, it's increasingly difficult for artists to stay relevant enough to make a living when the online content landscape changes so frequently. The speed at which technology has developed and continues to develop means that companies like YouTube make decisions without fully considering the long-term consequences that those decisions will have on their user base. And because of the monopoly which YouTube has on online video sharing, these consequences end up having tangible effects on how the public in general consumes media. So, to answer my initial question, the popular YouTube animators from a decade ago didn't completely disappear. They've just been forced to go elsewhere because the YouTube system no longer supports them. It's impossible to predict what YouTube will do with their platform going forward. But as it stands, any independent animators starting out now and looking to gain exposure are going to have to put far more effort into marketing themselves than they would have had to do a decade ago. Hopefully with time, awareness of these issues will generate more of a push towards decentralization and the creation of new platforms and systems that benefit animators.